All right, the November RTA meeting will come to order.
Good luck.
All right, it looks like we do have a quorum. In fact, I think everybody's here. That's awesome. All right, approval of the agenda. You all should have the agenda packet. I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Are we going to do roll call?
Second.
All right, that's been moved by Merv and seconded by Tyler. All those in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All right, that passes unanimously.
We don't do roll call?
We do not
Okay.
typically do roll call. Would you like us to?
No, it's
What-
that.
Well, how about this? We will.
You're the
We'll do introductions. We'll go around the table and do introductions.
Starting with her.
Starting with Commissioner Gonzalez.
Commissioner Gonzalez, El Paso County.
And on to you, Yolanda.
Yolanda Avila, Colorado Springs.
Ken Jure, Manitou Springs.
Jennifer Ivey, Legal Counsel.
Andy Gunning, PPACG, PPRTA.
We'll go back there, too.
Dennis Carpenter, Mayor Rama.
Stan Vanderwerf, El Paso County.
Merv Bennett, Colorado Springs.
Tyler Stevens, Green Mountain Falls.
Mark Waller, El Paso County. And just for the record, in our PPACG meeting, the RAMA representative was in a suit and tie today. I'm just going to say that. So.
He always dresses up.
And Councilmember
And Dave Geislinger, City of Colorado Springs.
Thank you. Thanks for that suggestion.
Not in a suit and tie.
Yeah. I already said. I'm not saying it again. It's not happening again, Merv.
Hasn't changed?
It's- I'm Daryl Glenn. Ken Gonzalez. All right. Agenda item number 3, public comments for things not on the agenda. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak on something that is not on the agenda? All right. Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 4, approval of the minutes from the October 18th meeting. I'd entertain a motion that way.
Move approval.
Second.
All right, that was moved by Tyler, seconded by Stan. All those in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That passes unanimously. The agenda item number 5, the Citizens Advisory Committee monthly report. I was trying to use my radio voice there. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Jim Godfrey, Chair of the CAC. I'd like to quickly highlight some of the major events from our November 7th meeting. Just for the record, we started at 1:30 and finished at 4:45. So a lot of detail and a lot of stuff to cover here. So, but I'll make it brief. The first thing was our 2019 budget presentation. You'll get a presentation on that today. We had a fairly in-depth discussion about several of those issues, and a primary concern from the CAC was the large amount of carryover from 2018. The total was roughly $91 million of carryover, and then they were adding another 55 or 56 million in 2019. And so our question was really centered around what's the plan and why so much. And we got satisfactory answers. I want to thank Mike Chavez and Kathleen Krieger. I emailed them a couple of questions and details about some stuff, and they quickly responded with details, and they answered the CAC's questions on that. So we did have that discussion. So let's let you know about that. So I won't delve into the detail on the rest of the budget discussion. But we did go through it with each of the member entities as they presented them. The other list of Colorado Springs contracts, the city brought 7 contracts forward. There was a request actually by the city and concurred with by the CAC to separate the first 6 items from number 7. Number 7 has to do with the Circle Drive Bridge over Fountain Creek and the railroad tracks and all that down on the south end of town. You'll get a presentation on that, a lot of discussion on that particular project, and Aaron and the city gave a great presentation, so I'm sure you'll enjoy that as much as we did. I'd like to thank Councilman Geisinger. You'll also see that we revisited the Springs Bridge Maintenance Task Order limit that you guys talked about last month. They brought that back. They had a meeting, and the city is changing that $1 million down to $500,000, $3 million limit per contract per bridge. And so that came back to the CAC. We had a long discussion, and I want to thank Councilman for coming and being there to support Aaron and the city in terms of how they got to that decision. And the CAC re-recommends approval of this revised recommendation on task orders. We did look at the county contracts as well. And then just a reminder that your policy, the board policy number 23, appointments and reappointments of at-large and at-large alternate CAC members. The at-large and at-large alternate are the only group of CAC members that have term limits, and other than those set by the member entities. The HAC and the CTAB have term limits for their members, but these are set by policy. And we have several members that are up for reappointment, Tom Viersba and Ed Dills, and so that we would ask, and I would recommend as chair that I would extend the membership on the CAC to those two individuals. We also had a discussion, one of the board members, our CAC policy says that if we want to change the term limits of the at-large and at-large alternate members, that the CAC must discuss and make a recommendation to the board for you to approve a change to the CAC policies. There was a discussion, there was a request by one of the CAC members to eliminate the term limits for at-large and at-large alternate. The majority of the CAC, after a long discussion, the majority of the CAC voted to maintain those term limits. So in full disclosure, I'm affected by that as well coming up next year. And so there's no action for you at this point. That's just an information only because we're not recommending changing our policies. So, and I think that kind of highlights the bulk of our meeting. I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So for the record, since you brought it up, so what is the current term of the CAG and then the term limit?
I'm going to ask Rick, there's 3 two-year terms for the at-large alternates. Is that right, Rick? And it's 3 three-year terms for the at-large members. Did I get that right?
Well, and then the member governments then
And then
determine what their terms are. Yeah.
Is that again?
The terms for the member government CAC members are 3 years per term, or per term, but no term limit for CTAB, HAC, Green Mountain Falls, Manitou, Raymond. For the at-larges and at-larges are a 2-term limit, 3 years each. At-large alternate, 2-term limit, 2 years each.
Not a simple answer.
No.
Now, the member governments, the CTAB and the HAC, have established their own term limits in terms of membership on this committee, but that's outside the purview of the Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Seeing none, thank you. All right, financial reports.
Good afternoon, Beverly Mayeski, PPRTA and Finance Manager. September's revenue was $9,244,000, so we were $917,000 above the monthly budget, or 11%. So that's been the highest so far this year. And that makes us, with 3 months remaining for the year, $3,685,000 above the year-to-date budget, or 5% on page 2. On page 1. On page 2, for the month, we were $992,000 above last September's actual, and we're $4,363,000, or almost 6% year-to-date compared to the actual last year-to-date. So are there any questions on this financial reports?
Any questions? Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Quick question. Does that money get reallocated as other money if it comes back into the, well, this wouldn't be reallocated. Would it be allocated since it's unexpected?
Just to Green Mountain Falls.
So then, during the amendment process this next year, so we will receive the rest of this year in March. So then we have our audit, and in June, we have the amended budget. We take the revenue over budget and allocate it out just as it normally is. The maintenance, 35 maintenance, 55% capital, 10% transit. But the revenue over budget up to $5 million capital portion will go to the I-25 GAP project. But the
But only
transit
capital.
and maintenance will still be coming into the member governments.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, thank you. Oh, you know what we did not do? I apologize. We didn't accept the CAC monthly report, so I'm going to recall agenda item number 5.
I move to accept.
Second.
All right, that's been moved by Councilmember Bennett, seconded by Commissioner Gonzalez. All those in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All right, seeing no opposition, that passes unanimously. All right, back to the agenda. Thank you. On to agenda item number 7, budget presentation.
Okay, so last week, the CAC had the draft budget presentation or workshop, and then on December 12th, we'll have the board will either approve the budget or, well, probably will approve it with either as it is or with any changes. And today's the board's budget workshop, and I could go through the overview of the budget, and then if you would like, you can have the member governments come up and present their detail that's within this budget. So we can determine that at that time. You might have some questions. So on page 4 of the budget packet, we have a sales and use tax estimate of $100 million, which is the same as this year's. So, and then estimated interest earned of $1.2 million, and then we take out the collection costs from CDOT of $270,000, estimated administrative costs of $740,000, which is 70% of 1%. We're maxed out at 1% according to the ballot measure language, but this is 70%, 7.7. So anything we don't spend goes back in to the calculation at the amended budget time, and we typically don't spend all of this. So then the reserve adjustment, which is $10,000, and the reserve for the PPRTA is 3% Tabor and 7% board designated reserve for a total of 10%. So our net revenue that is allocated is $100,180,000, and then you can see that 10% goes to transit, 35% to maintenance, and 55% to capital. Then the next section allocates the maintenance allocation that was just calculated, the 35%, to the member governments based on their 2010 census. So when we get a new decennial census, we'll replace those percentages once we have those, and they'll be allocated according to that, the 2020 census. The capital then is allocated approximately the same percentage, just rounded And that's because the member governments, when they came up with their lists prior to the last ballot measure, determined that they would estimate their projects based on what we thought revenue would be over the 10 years, and then their percentage of that. And it's just, so we've gone with allocating it basically with that same percentage. And then transit allocation of 10% is $10,018,000, and then they've added their transit fare box revenue and their other revenue, which includes advertising revenue. Are there any questions on that?
Any questions? Commissioner Vanderwerf?
Yes, thank you. I know that there's not been a motion to approve it, but it is an approval item. I'll just recommend that when the motion is made, whoever might do it, I think there's a simple amendment. It is on page 4, very first line. It says 2018 revenue projection. I think it's supposed to say 2019.
Yes, that's correct. This used to say 2018, and then we add something in the next line, but we didn't this year, so thank you.
So whoever makes the amendment, recommend that. Thanks. Or whoever makes the motion.
I'll have that corrected by next month when they do the actual amendment.
Approval.
Approval, thank you.
That's outstanding.
Motion.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, so how do we want to handle this? Do we want to hear from each of the member governments individually? Do we just want to call them up if they have questions? Councilmember Geisinger.
I would recommend just have them come up and ask questions. I read the packet. I thought the packet was pretty self-explanatory.
I agree. All right, are there any questions for our member from the town of Rama? Mr. Mayor, you got any questions? Okay, Green Mountain Falls? Nope. Manitou? No. Yeah, El Paso, I don't have any. City of Colorado, you guys? No. Colorado Springs? Okay, I think we're good. So this is on for approval. However, we're not approving it until next month, so it was
Right,
really
so-
informational today.
Right, and any changes, which Commissioner Vanderwerf made a change, so I'll just make that. But if you see any others, and if you see anything that you'd like to ask a question about, please email me before next month's meeting.
All right.
Okay.
Mr. Sonnenberg.
Occasionally, at this point in
Yes, we
the
could.
budget review process, in years past, occasionally, the board would direct some research, so that's why I put approve on there,
Okay.
to give you that option.
I think we only had one grammatical change, so. All right, I think we should move on to agenda item number 8, the 2018 capital maintenance and public transportation contracts. City Colorado Springs, Mr. Chavez.
Good afternoon, Board. Mike Chavez, City Engineering. Going to ask that we go through items 1 through 6 and separate 7 out because I have a presentation to do on that one. So the first is, do we need a vote or can I just do that and assume it? The first item is a change order to our public information subconsultant on the Academy Cottonwoods Bridge project. That project, the schedule got extended. It was a CMGC, so as they were negotiating after they kind of started the design, they decided to kind of stretch the schedule to get out of the rainy season, and that lengthened the time of the contract. So the PI guy has just more time to be putting notices and stuff out. So we assumed 8 months originally, and it's gone to we added 7 months to the schedule. So that covers his costs. Next item, operations and maintenance is getting some traffic control devices. It's basically for their in-house crews. They've increased the number of crews out there doing potholes and some patching, and it's basically for their safety. It's the impact attenuators and aero boards so that people know there's construction ahead. Next item is a traffic study for the Ivywell neighborhood. With all the redevelopment going on South Academy, we need to look at what that's going to do to the neighborhood circulation and just make sure we try to avoid problems. So
Academy or Nevada?
Did I say Nevada?
You said Academy.
Nevada and South Nevada.
Okay.
No, yeah,
I was going to say, I didn't think they did.
South Nevada, south of I-25.
Next item is a change order to get Martin Marietta back out to finish paving on Cascade Avenue as part of that on-street bike lane and improvement project. Woodman, we added the privacy fence is being constructed, and we also, so we had AECom inspecting that, and also they're going to be watching some of the landscape maintenance activities and making sure that the establishment, during the establishment period, that things are getting done so that we get everything established. And the last item is a renewal of our on-call contracts. There's a large list, and they will be renewed based on the terms that they originally were, and some are $0, some have a dollar amount. So whatever terms they were approved on, they'll still apply. So we kind of do that every year. We just renew them every year.
Sure. Mr. Godfrey?
Jim Godfrey, I think item 6, it shows on the spreadsheet just capital, but I think it's a mix of capital and
Yes,
maintenance.
yes.
So there should be both capital and maintenance projects.
Oh, that's right, yeah. So there's a combination of both kinds. I can change that. And any other questions on those?
Mr. Chair, I move approval of items 1 through 6.
On the city's capital maintenance.
And I would second.
All right, been moved and seconded. All those in favor of approval of City of Colorado Springs maintenance items 1 through 6, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Seeing no opposition, that passes unanimously. We'll move on to 7A7.
Okay, so we are looking at going into final design on the Circle Bridge project, and that was on the ballot as a rehabilitation. But we've gone through alternative analysis, and we actually are recommending a replacement. So I just want to give a quick overview of why we came to that conclusion, just since it was a change. So basically, the Circle Bridges they go over Hancock, Fountain Creek, and the railroad tracks down there on the south end of town. They're an old bridge built in the 60s. They're steel girder, and they are in pretty bad shape. The girders, or the railings that were built originally are substandard. They're rusty, and so a few years back, we went in and actually put jersey barrier to keep people from falling off those bridges. Okay, let's just scroll. This is just the vicinity map, but you have the creek, the railroad, Hancock, and here's the Goodwill store and the Kohl's, and then it goes over into the neighborhood that's over there by Monterey. So there's actually 4 bridges, just another aerial view. So the goal of the project was to look at whether we should rehabilitate or replace it. We wanted to bring it to current AASHTO design loads. If we rehabilitate it, we'd get 30-year design life out of it. If we build new, we'd get 75 years. We also wanted to see how we can get pedestrian and bike accommodations on the bridge. Right now, there's no sidewalk, but there are people who walk from the east neighborhoods over to the commercial. They walk on the street. It's very dangerous, and in time, there will be sidewalk built on either side of the bridges as we have funding and as you know, population grows. And we'll look at the long-term cost of either option. So these two show the bottom of the bridge has got a lot of effervescence, so basically water seeping through the concrete, and that water that's in the deck is also rusting out the rebar that's in there. We have done some work. We've patched these columns and the pier caps and worked on them, spent a decent amount of money, but that's what we weren't sure if we want to continue that, so did the study. The goal of the rehab was to bring them up to current design standards, get 30-year life out of them, see if we could add bike and pedestrian movements on them, and reduce the maintenance efforts that we have to put into this. Again, here's the rail. It's rusted and not standard. The jersey barrier there was put in place, so this is just some of the details out of the consultant's work. They looked at what we would need to do to reuse the existing girders, and basically the result is you basically got to rebuild them, put them new. You can't really just touch them up with a coat of paint. And you can see just they're in pretty bad shape. Let me see. So the substructure is the pier caps and columns, and these have been worked on. We basically came to the same conclusion that the pier caps have to pretty much be redone, new. The columns are in pretty good shape. They will last, but they don't. They do meet design code, but and they don't need to be rehabilitated. But the foundations of the bridge don't meet code requirements. So we'd be pretty much building a new bridge on a foundation that is iffy, and it's susceptible to scouring. So that's kind of a lot of investment on something that, on a foundation that we're not sure how it'll hold up. So so basically the recommendation is replace the superstructure, rehabilitate the substructure, monitor the foundations, and you get 30 years life, and the foundations don't meet current standards. So basically sink a lot of money into something that isn't really what we want. Especially the fact that the costs were between $16 million and $21 million to do that work. My thought it's going to be pushing more toward the $21 million to rehabilitate that. So we looked at replacing the bridges entirely. We looked at 27 different alternative replacement types, different span arrangements, and different construction phasings of building the bridges. These would be wide enough to have the 2 lanes each way. We'd have a 4-foot sidewalk on one side and a 10-foot path, multi-path on one side to accommodate bikes and pedestrians. And there'd be a shoulder there so that cars aren't just whipping by the pedestrians. We also made the span such that we could expand Las Vegas and Hancock underneath if we needed to. So we don't want to put piers in the middle of the roadways or any future work on them. Again, we looked at different configurations, 5-span, 3-span. These are just to kind of look at the different, cost alternatives. These are the different bridges, just kind of some span spacing. We also look right now. There's like a mound, so the 4 bridges are because they end at this middle area of dirt, and so we looked at, do we rebuild them that way, or do we put retaining wall and rebuild that kind of, I don't know what you call it, but instead of having a continuous bridge. There's a piece of land there. Different tub girders, steel girders, and concrete girders. So we went through quite a bit of work, and we came up with pre-stressed concrete girder bridge design with a 75-year design life is what that came out on top. And we're looking at about a $24 million cost to replace those. Then we looked at how do we actually build this, and one alternative is basically you shift traffic to one of the existing bridges, 1 lane each way only. You build a new bridge, put traffic on the new one, and finish the other side. Another option was to actually build a new bridge offline and leave the 2 existing bridges in service. You have 2 lanes each way, and then you can switch traffic to the new bridge, keep one of the old bridges, fix it, and flop it. This allows for 4 lanes during construction, but it also does have a cost, so different. So the big deal, that one was about $29 million if we do this offline bridge. So when we did a cost analysis, we're going to look basically look at the green. So the green is the rehab, and now this is discounted dollars and life cycle and user costs. But basically, the rehab is $21 million versus a $24 million replacement. If we do the off-alignment bridge, that goes up to $29. And so that's why we're leaning to a replacement. And the user costs are something that governments look at. But what I told the CAC is I don't have to pay user costs. it's an inconvenience to the public, but to reduce the user cost more, and it'd be more on the offline replacement, the user cost savings come when you do the offline construction, but there's also a $5 million initial, investment on the city, and we're struggling from finding funds. So I just can't see how we can do the offline option for $5 million. So what we're going is this replacement of the four bridges with the not using the offline alignment construction method. And basically here you have the costs are pretty close. Maintenance for the rehabilitation is much higher because it just needs more work. And the big thing is just service life that we get. We get 75 years, we're done, we don't have to mess with it. I'll be long gone. Most of my staff will be long gone in 75 years. We do the rehab in 30 years. There might be a couple guys who still be around having to deal with it. So we're recommending a replacement, and the reason I wanted to just give you a brief update is because it was classified as a rehabilitation, and we didn't really do a presentation, but we did discuss this on the Cottonwood Creek Academy Bridge, where it was a rehab, identified as a rehab, but we ended up replacing the whole thing. So that's all I have. If there's any questions on that.
So a couple comments that might elicit some questions. I think when you look at this, it's an absolute no-brainer to do the completely replacement cost. Here's the catch. The ballot language says rehabilitate. It says rehabilitate in some areas. It says replace in other areas. And so the trick is figuring out, does completely replacing, satisfy the RTA ballot language that says replace, or does replace satisfy the language that says rehabilitate? We couldn't find any definitional criteria within the statute itself that defines rehabilitate versus replace. There is a construction definition that sort of makes them sound the same, but there's, I think, potential, for litigation if we approve this, and there's potential somebody could say we're contravening the will of the voters in some way. So that's the one issue out there. I personally think it's a no-brainer, and I'm certainly willing to support it. But we are replacing ballot language says rehabilitate. Councilmember Geisler.
Yeah, and we did discuss this beforehand. I'm looking at a document called, it's the Secretary of Interior Standards for Historic Preservation. Because we were looking at a definition for rehabilitation in the construction context, and this is as close as we got. And the definition for rehabilitation, or standards for rehabilitation, it reads, rehabilitation is defined as the act or process of making possible a compatible use for a property through repair, alterations, and additions while preserving those portions or features which convey its historical, cultural, or architectural values. Now, obviously, this is not a historical bridge, but it is a bridge. I'm comfortable saying that this, in fact, is a rehabilitation of the bridge in the context of what was approved by voters several years ago, even though Mike has used the phrases as a different, in a different context of repair versus replace. And again, more fundamentally than that, this is clearly the best way to preserve the taxpayers' funds and to maximize the taxpayers' funds. So while I recognize that issue, and I think it is an issue and people could challenge it, I'm comfortable going ahead and approving this.
Councilmember Bennett.
Yeah, I've actually driven across the bridge, and then I've gone underneath and stopped and walked underneath it. When you drive across it, it sounds fine. When you walk underneath it, it'll scare the daylights out. So if anybody wants to sue us, I would suggest we make them stand underneath the bridge.
Doug Bruce, you're going to need to stand
Because when
here
you
for a
look
minute,
up-
please.
When you look up, you couldn't see it real good on the pictures, but you look up and you see, it's a miracle that it feels like that bridge is still standing.
Trustee Stevens?
I'm in agreement too, and I just quickly looked up on Webster's and said rehabilitation is to bring someone or something back to good condition. I'd say if we're exceeding that by bringing it to new condition, it's a hard fight to say that we're not doing more than what we promised the voters. So I think we're exceeding what we promised the voters, and I think that's a pretty weak lawsuit. And
Well, and the only reason I bring it up, there are two very clearly delineated terms within the ballot language. One says rehabilitate, one says replace. All of the discussion today was replace.
And I think following City of Boulder, if needed, we can maintain one of those steel posts of the side rail and keep that in place at all times.
We want to follow Boulder in no way for say that. Councilmember Bennett.
Mr. Chair, I move approval of item number 7.
Hang on one second. I think Commissioner Gonzalez had a comment.
Yeah, so I do have two concerns on this one. So one, I think if we're going to, do the gray area on definitions, that opens us up to future gray line definitions on other things. And so that is a little worrisome to me if the ballot language specifically had two different language things. And as Tyler mentioned, this is over and above. And I think part of the reason perhaps this was put on rehab was so that not as much money was necessarily being spent on this project that would be spent somewhere else. So we're doing something above and beyond. The example would maybe be the footpath over the bridge that we said we would not go over a certain amount of money because that was beyond the scope of what was being approved as to go over to the Beautiful Park. That this might be an issue for discussion in terms of, if we are going to replace, perhaps what is approved is the cost amount of the rehabilitation, and the city provides the remainder through general fund above and beyond that. That's just a discussion point, because I do think there is a difference, and I think there has been some precedent set in how money was funded, and it was capped at a certain cost, and perhaps that's at the rehab cost versus the replacement. And I'm not saying they shouldn't do the replacement. It sounds like, absolutely, as you mentioned, it's the no-brainer, but there was verbiage in there, and there's a reason that verbiage was in there.
Well, and I want to be really clear here. I don't think there's any gray lining or area regarding definitions, and the reason I don't think that is because there aren't definitions associated at all. It would have been awesome if there had been definitions associated with the ballot language in some way, but there aren't. They're not there.
I understand that, but there are two different words used for projects.
That's
what I'm saying.
That's absolutely correct. There are two different words being used. So are those words synonymous, or are they not synonymous? So, or does one include the other? Councilmember Geislinger.
And I have handled appellate law before. I think it's important that we have this discussion, because if there is litigation regarding this, it's important that the reviewing court look back and listen to what it is that we're saying. I think that, because we did discuss the ballot language, in looking at the ballot language as a whole, and looking at the ballot language specifically for this item, one of the things I think is important to look at is that it's to rehabilitate the bridge that is part of the street, that is part of the roadway. I think that might be a little bit of a stretch, but it's clear from the context that what the voters were concerned with was maintaining this arterial street and access to the street, and the bridge is part of this street. So from in the absence of a specific definition of rehabilitation versus replacement in the voter-approved language, I am comfortable saying that rehabilitation here, and that this is, in fact, rehabilitation, and it is the best way to use taxpayer funds to rehabilitate that particular bridge.
Any other comments?
Yes.
Commissioner Vanderwerf?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the context of some of the other conversations, let's say the bike path underneath and whatever, are any of those things new concepts for this area that are potentially being added under this construct? And the idea would be, if it's new, as opposed to a repair of the bridge, then maybe that is where we end up with a definitional problem and have to pay some attention to that.
No, the cost for the bridge, what we did is we made sure that the bridge pier spacing was adequately placed so that when we come in to widen those roads, we don't have a pier in the way.
So there isn't going to be, under the current project concept, there's nothing about fixing those roads or widening those roads or adding a bike lane that is not there presently. Is that correct?
Mr. Chavez?
There might be, but it would be a different funding.
Okay.
But again, we're talking the bridge cost.
And I am referring to within the context of the funding for this project.
Are you referring to the Circle Drive or the roads underneath?
No, Hancock and
Hancock and Las
It
Vegas?
doesn't matter, I don't think. It would count for Circle Drive itself. And, from the presentation, it looked like there's the addition of a walking path there that isn't currently existing on Circle, correct?
Correct. There's a sidewalk that we're installing.
Right.
And then the plan would be the city will eventually be able to install those connectors over time with the missing sidewalk program, with other
Right.
intersection improvement type projects.
So I think Commissioner Vanderwerf's question is are the RTA funds being used for this going to cover the expansion to include the sidewalk itself?
On Circle Bridge.
On Circle.
Yes, they are, because city code and ADA require that you have pedestrian accessibility. So even though the sidewalk is new, it's not, it's required
So
to bring it up to code.
And so the follow-on question would be, were this to be just rehabbed, that would have to be an addition.
Yes, and what we saw was in the rehab, adding the sidewalk was not possible because the piers and the pier caps weren't big enough and strong enough to support the added weight and width. So that kind of propelled us to have to replace.
So it does come to a comment about, are you enhancing the capability of what you have there as opposed to just replacing or rehabbing what you currently have? Because the enhancement might be a consideration for different funding.
I would say not, because it's a requirement.
It's an ADA plan.
The ADA requirement. You have to bring it up to
You can't rehab
code.
it without installing the sidewalks.
Right.
In order to install the sidewalks, it pushed the rehab dollars much higher. Because you can rehab with sidewalks, it just costs a lot.
Nah, I think it would, I don't think it was
I'm not
feasible.
saying it's smart,
Yeah.
but you could do it, right?
Yeah, it'd be, a lot of money, and again, it's just 30 years. And
It's a great discussion when the attorney wants to weigh in. Ms. Ivy?
Well, I think I'm getting at what Tyler was just clarifying. I think what I heard you just say is that it's actually not possible to technically rehab it, as you're using that term, and bring it up to code.
Yes.
So you could only, your version of rehab it, and it still wouldn't meet the current code standards.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you. So my last question is, based on projects that were under rehab and then under replacement, have we done any other projects that were listed under rehab as a full replacement, or is this the first time
No.
we would be doing
Yes.
this?
The Academy Cottonwood project we're doing now was listed as a rehab, but when we went through the analysis, we realized replacement was a better use of the money, and we brought that to the board and let you guys know that, hey, actually replacing, not rehabilitating it.
All right, thank you. Any other comment on this? We do have a motion on the table, and it has been seconded. I think we're going to do it this way. I'm going to change things up on you. I'm going to ask for hands in the air on everybody who's in favor, and then I'll do the same for opposed, in case we do have some opposition to this one. So all those in favor, could you please just raise your hand? All right. Oh, well, I guess it's close. It's close. All right, so for the record, all voting members raise their hand in approval, so that passes unanimously.
All right, thank you.
It was Tyler. The guy from Glenwood Springs. All right, Ms. Irvin, El Paso County, you better be as controversial.
I try, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Board of Directors, Jennifer Irvin, El Paso County. And I flipped away from it, holy cow. The one item that we do have is property acquisition on Highway 105. We're asking for your approval for $262,900 to Integrity Bank and Trust. And just a correction on our memo, it mentioned that this was in the town of Monument. This property is actually located in unincorporated El Paso County. So just also want to mention that this project is partially funded through Federal Highway Administration Grant 2. So not only do we have to go through this board and our Board of County Commissioners, but we also go through Federal Highways and CDOT, and they review all of these appraisals and approve our just compensation as well.
If you could, what is the definition of acquisition? No.
There's a right-of-way acquisition book that's about this thick that we follow.
All right, yeah, I retract the question. Sorry. All right. Any other comments? All right, I'd entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
All right, that's been moved by Commissioner Gonzalez, seconded by Commissioner Vanderwerf. All those in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Thank you for
Seeing
your
no
consideration.
opposition, that passes unanimously. Listen to the peanut gallery over here. City of Colorado Springs requests to increase task order limits for bridge maintenance work. It happens.
Yeah, definitely does. Good afternoon, Aaron Egbert, City of Colorado Springs Public Works. I'm back. So we did spend some time meeting with Councilman Geislinger. We've had a couple meetings with the street department and some of the other departments. Nicole Spindler, our procurement manager, is here if you have specific questions for her about some of this stuff. But we'll try to show you what we're proposing now. So the way our current contract is set up, we have two contractors, Chanel Construction and TLM. And back in 2013 is when we selected those on-call bridge contractors. Originally, back in 2013, our bridge maintenance budget was $2 million. So we proposed doing about $1 million worth of construction and then saved $1 million for running the program and doing engineering and designs and those type of things. So what happened then is as we increased our budget ahead of the 2C program, which next year's proposed budget will be $5.7 million, what that has done is that's created a number of change orders, about 10 change orders on Chanel, which is almost 700% increase, and TLM Construction, there were 17 change orders, which were basically adding items to the contract and adding dollars to the contract budgets, which is over 1,800% increase over that contract over a 5-year period. And that is frowned upon in procurement rules, which is why Nicole's kind of here to kind of talk through that. Kind of what we're requesting is to go to a zero contract task order based contract. So you'd see that next month. We have selected 3 contractors and we will be, the larger projects, we will be bidding them to all 3 to try to get better prices so that we can kind of sharpen their pencils. And the way the limit is now with $200,000, the way that would work if we had, just for an example, a $750,000 bridge maintenance project, we would have to do 3 task orders of $200,000, an additional task order of, or our additional modification of $150,000, and that would require chief of staff signature at those rate levels with our procurement rules, which would be 8 separate documents. So what we're proposing to do is drop the limit down to, from our million, which we were asking for last time, to 500,000, 3 million max. If we do have a bridge maintenance project that goes over the $750,000, we would bring that to the CAC and the board for approval of that item. Now, if we have a good example, if we had one that was $600,000, we would do a $500,000 task order and a $100,000 modification to that task order, and then that would show up on the task order log so that you could see what we were doing. And with that, I will open it up to questions or concerns.
Yes, Councilmember Geisinger.
And this is just to follow up on my conversations regarding this after last meeting. I said I would go and talk to the folks. A couple of things emerged from this that caused me to now support this and ask for your approval. One is this mirrors essentially the procurement process within the city. And I would ask Nicole to come up and talk at some point, because she was talking about why having the current level is not good with procurement practices generally and is frowned upon by general procurement practices. The second thing is the number of contracts last year that this would apply to, I think, was 13. Is that correct?
Well,
where we'd have to get a...
Yeah, we had 5, over the last 2 years, which we've had the increase in the budgets, we had 5 projects over $750,000, and we had 3 additional projects that were over 500. So there was about 8 projects that kind of fit into this.
And the reality of having to go 8 separate times to Jeff Green to get the signature on the checks and the approval is frankly, while it is inconvenient and time-consuming, Mr. Green does have other things going on.
Really?
Yes. So I think it does make sense. And Ms. Spindler, if you could come up and just briefly summarize for the other commissioners why this is frowned upon from a procurement standpoint and why it's appropriate to have the PPRTA process mirror the city's process.
Absolutely, and good afternoon. I do want to spell out that we are asking for an increase so that we may be more transparent in our processes. Having a $200,000 cap on task orders kind of looks like we're skirting requirements and not being upfront and just transparent with how much the actual bridge maintenance for that project will cost. So in requesting this is more in line with being outright with what that requirement is and going to the board, going to the CAC one time, going to Jeff Green with that signature, or in this case at $750,000, the mayor would sign that. So we'd have the approvals across the board, and it would be 1 or 2 times, depending on the cost of that project.
And I'm done.
Any questions?
Yeah, just for the record, I may have missed it here. The current level is what again?
200,000.
200,000. I'm going to 500.
And it's 500 for the city.
500 for the city,
For
yes.
a city project, general fund is a $500,000 task order.
Right.
I have a more fundamental question. Educate me as to the term task order versus a contract, because in my mind, thinking that if you're affect these repairs, you'd simply sign a contract for that amount, and that would just be a contract amount, rather than going this task order route.
The task order route, certainly. What we've established are task order agreements, and this is where we have solicited competitively and publicly vendors who are capable to do the work. Those who are pre-qualified after an evaluation process by engineering, we would assign them a contract. So that would be the contract that's signed with a cap, so maybe $3 million per year. Under that cap, we would assign a task order. So a particular bridge would be, estimated to cost $600,000 in terms of repairs or rehab. we would assign a vendor after another competitive process, that particular bridge, create a task order, it comes to you guys on that task order log, it goes to Jeff Green for signature, and one time through. And so that's the difference between a task order and a contract. They are underneath a contract.
Makes sense.
Commissioner Vanderwerf?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So just a couple of other questions. We had something similar in the county where we had a limit above which the Board of County Commissioners had to approve. It wasn't necessarily a task order versus contract-driven thing. It was just a dollar amount-driven thing. But we had that number for a really, really long time. And so when we actually did the research to figure out what the inflation rate difference was from when we originally established it to today's dollars, we were able to quadruple that number and actually keep it within the same value. And so my first question here is, I don't know if we have kind of the staff could tell us when 200,000 was established and what would be the inflation number to make it an equivalent number in today's dollars. I kind of make that point because for me that's a no-brainer number right there, right from the start, to seek approval from this board because it would be equivalent dollar figures, right? And perhaps I'm not understanding everything that's going on here with regard to this project, but maybe is there another way possibly, notwithstanding that the 200 might change due to inflation, but let's just say for the moment it stays at 200. Would there be a way for the city or any other public agency to come to this board and say, here's our limit, this is what we got to do. However, it makes a lot more sense to eliminate severability of contract problems and so forth, that we use a different number on this project and actually seek this board's approval in advance of your chasing down the signatures in the city. So you do it a priori, and that way we vote on it, we establish it, we say it's good to go, and then the city doesn't have to go through all of these gyrations. And so I offer that as another idea. I'm not sure if that's good or bad.
Well, I think as a practical matter, Commissioner Vanderwerf, that is, we just looked at a budget that's proposed that includes bridge maintenance funds. And the bridge maintenance funds for 2019 are
5.7.
So we are when in approving the budget saying bridge maintenance is $5.7 million, so I think we've done that at least on a universal scale. And then this relates to the specific prices of specific jobs that are in that $5.7 million.
Okay. So I still have the question about what the inflation thing is. I have no idea.
Mr. Godfrey?
Jim Godfrey. To answer Commissioner Vanderwerf's point, for large projects, the municipalities do come here and request a change in the change order limit for that project based on the severity. Like Woodman Road was an example, and we keep those task order or amendment, is it change orders or task orders, that we keep a list of those. So I think that concern where there is a large project with a large number, they do, on a case-by-case basis, do come back through the CAC and the board. Did I get that right, Rick? I'd have forgotten the policy number, but it seems like there's one of those policies we do that with. Mike, what was the big?
I'm not sure the number yet. On the large project, we have a higher task order.
Yeah, right. Right.
All right.
It's sort of a culture change for the city because we are going to more of these on-call task order type contracts for the work, for our pre-overlay concrete, those type of things, so that we actually have a contractor on board if we do have a bridge closure issue and we need to mobilize someone fast. That's very helpful to have that. But because of our audits and because of the procurement rules, it's frowned upon to do a specific contract and then change order 10 more bridges into it and those type of things.
Mr. Chair, I move approval of the city's request to increase the task order limit for bridge maintenance work.
Second.
And Commissioner Gonzalez, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my question is the last sentence. So we're talking about $500,000, but then the last sentence states, Any bridge maintenance project over $750,000 will be brought to the CAC and board for approval. So I don't understand the difference between the 500 and the 750.
Yeah, so what we would do is you would see on the task order log, there'll be a modification to that task order. So we're keeping the 500,000 limit, but we can do a $600,000 project, and it'll show on the log. It's just giving us a little more flexibility with those limits.
And I think,
So my question, so you could do a $600,000 project and then add another $500,000 for a $1.1 million without any?
No, so what would, okay, so a couple years ago, the city went to on-call contracts with $500,000 task order limits. We came to the RTA and asked, hey, on RTA funds, can we have the same limits? And there was some concern, so we came to the $200,000 limit. So right now, the city and RTA have different limits. So for bridge maintenance, because these projects are a little bit bigger and a little more complex, what we're asking is, we came with $1 million, but we can work with a $500,000 limit. But what we're saying, right now with the $200,000 limit, we could keep adding task order up to $3 million, and they're on the log, and you guys don't really see that. So $500,000 is a good number, and but instead of just adding 2 or 3 $500,000 task orders, what we're saying is, hey, if something's over 750, we'll come and tell you, hey, this is a bigger one, and we want to bring this to you so you know, so you can approve it. So between $500,000 and 750, we can do 1 or 2 task order modifications if we need a little more. But rather than just do that, unlimited, we're saying, hey, if it's over 750, we're going to come to you and get your approval, so that there's not these unlimited modifications. So that's why that 750 is there.
Yeah.
Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm also just not that familiar if we have a policy of this $200,000 limit, and that universally applies to all public agencies, and it might be maybe nobody else does these task orders this way, but do we have a policy that says that? So if we consider this change, are we actually considering, is this going to then apply to everybody, and is it really about making word changes in a policy, or is this something unique only for the city?
Just a practice, a board-approved practice.
Okay. So for what the city is seeking, it is applicable in our interaction on a practice with city activity only then?
Yes, however, I'm preparing a very detailed version of this kind of a topic on contracts, task orders, change orders, modifications to task orders. I'm preparing a full-page list that would include these kinds of things for a possible CAC consideration and board consideration of a new board policy number 30.
Great. I think I'm ready to go forward, but I also think it is wise to establish that policy so that we have fair and universal application. Thank you.
just one other
Sure.
input from Aaron, and there's a time issue because the contracts to the vendors need to go out in December, so you need to have some direction at this time.
Yeah, our existing contracts expire December 31st, so we've selected these 3 new bridge contractors, and we're in negotiations right now with costs on their unit proposal, and then we will be bringing you 3 contracts for those contractors in December, so that we don't have any period of time where we don't have someone that can help us with an emergency bridge project.
And one of the things that you talked about is if you get direction from us, you'd like to have that direction before you finalize those contracts.
It's going to make, we have to have it in order to set that contract, whether it's a $0 task order based or whether it's a full
Right.
contract.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Excellent discussion. All those in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All right, that passes unanimously.
And, Mr. Chair, just one last comment.
Yes, Commissioner Vanderwerf.
So perhaps it's ongoing and there's no requirement for board direction, but I would have an interest in that policy development going forward and going through the process for approval. If there's no action needed from this board in order for that to continue, then I'm good. But if there's, an interest in board action on that, I think we should, I'll ask the staff to tell us if you think you need that to go forward.
Thank you.
Not today, but I think you can proceed with the three contracts that Aaron mentioned at your December meeting, and I expect to have the draft board policy number 30 that includes all the discussion of today also at your December meeting.
Thank you.
All right, on to agenda item number 9A, monthly transit report. Mr. Blewett.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Craig Blewett, Transit Services Manager with the City of Colorado Springs. We have our report in your agenda, just a couple quick things to highlight. With regard to local route service, we saw an increase in September compared to 2018. So as I mentioned, I think last month, I think we had our smallest decrease year-over-year ridership. Last month, we have turned the corner and we're heading in the positive direction. So we're real pleased with that. It's also the highest ridership month of the year. So once again, we're very pleased. With regard to ADA service, we had a slight decrease of 0.2%. That was one less weekday, so I should have even referenced that, I guess, in our increase that we had this in September compared to last year. That was even with one less weekday. We have more ridership on weekdays than we do on weekends. ADA service is the same way. We have a lot more ADA service ridership on weekdays. So we had a slight decrease comparing 2018 to 2017. In van pool ridership, we had a 10% increase, and that's healthy. Our van pool program continues to rebound and be quite healthy. Once again, we run the number of vans appropriate for the number of riders, and so we don't drive empty vans up and down I-25 or to other locations. We right-size the number of vans to the number of riders that we have. I should also mention on van pool that that CDOT has a contract with Dr. Cog, and Dr. Cog is the Denver Regional Council of Governments that we are going to piggyback on that provides an incentive to van poolers who drive I-25 corridor. So the incentive is $200 per van pool for the year of 2019. So that includes both existing van poolers as well as new ones. And it's good to have that incentive that helps with the management of that project while it's under construction. In our projects, we did add those two routes starting October 1st. And we include the ridership there. The ridership is fairly small when you look at it, just 26 passengers a day on the new Union route and 28 passengers a day on the new route up to Pikes Peak Community College. But that's not unexpected. It can take up to 18 months for a new route to reach its potential in terms of ridership. So we're not surprised. We're going to continue to build on that. We're working very closely with Pikes Peak Community College to market the program at the college. And finally, as you may have seen, Mountain Metro Transit won gold as the best local transportation service in this year's Colorado Springs Independent Best of competition. We beat out the other two finalists. You know, they have two rounds. One round is open-ended, then they take the three finalists and go head-to-head. And so we beat out Bustang and Z-Trip. There were over 12,000 votes in that final round, so we're very pleased with that. So some good news there. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Sierra Madre budget plan update, City of Colorado Springs.
Mike Chavez, City Engineering. So last month, I think some of the CAC members wanted to kind of see where the Sierra Madre project was going, so I put together a rough cost estimate based on design, the different aspects of construction. There's basic street construction, some utility work, and then the enhanced landscaping elements, excuse me, for $24.8 million. And then the different funding sources that we were looking at using. The concern was that we had put $400,000 of capital money in for the initial design, and that came out of one of the traffic engineering programs. I think it was, I can't remember if it was intersection congestion, but one of those programs that we used to do the initial design. And then what we're looking for in construction is using about $2.8 million of RTA maintenance, and that number came from estimate of streets was going to have to go in there and work on those two streets sometime in the near future. And so they estimated what they'd have to spend in putting in curbing, ramps, and overlay. And instead of doing that work now and then having it changed or ripped out, we delayed that project and just using that portion, that $2.8 million to help cover the basic street reconstruction. And then funding sources for the rest of it come from the developers and tourism bonds and some other funding. So that's just a short summary so that people kind of see where, what's some of the elements and where the funding's coming from.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, appreciate it. All right, the monthly change order and property acquisition reports.
Any questions on our log?
All right, seeing none, thank you.
All right.
El Paso County's monthly change order and property acquisition report.
Jennifer Irvin, El Paso County, here for any questions.
Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, number 10, administrative actions and reports. Let's talk about reappointment process for CAC members.
There are two CAC members, Tom Viersma and Ed Dills, who are at-large and at-large alternate respectively. They are eligible for a second term, and the normal process is for the board to direct the subcommittee, the board's policy number 23, which is attached in your memo, that sets up the subcommittee to review appointments, reappointments for at-large and at-large alternates, and that subcommittee is the board chair, board vice chair, and CAC chair. So the recommended motion would be to direct the subcommittee to develop a recommendation for these reappointments or some other alternate plan, such as advertising.
Would somebody like to make that motion, please?
To direct the board subcommittee to initiate a process to prepare for the December meeting a recommendation regarding Mr. Viersma and Mr. Dills for reappointment.
So moved.
And second.
All right, that's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All right, that passes unanimously. We'll meet upon adjournment. Thank you. Okay, now on to board members.
This is information only. Just a reminder that board members need to pursue their reappointment to this board, because your appointments to this board are annually on a calendar year basis. So begin discussion with your board regarding your reappointment to the PPRTA board for 2019, and let us know what your boards decide as soon as possible, either December or January. Also, at the January meeting, the PPRTA board will need to select its officers. The primary officers are the chair and the vice chair, and pursuant to the board bylaws, the chair and vice chair can only be from City of Colorado Springs and El Paso County, and those reverse each year. So since El Paso County is chair and the vice chair is City of Colorado Springs, those would flip. Not necessarily the people, but the office holders. So City of Colorado Springs would the city would have the chairmanship for 2019, and county would have the vice chair. Information only.
Thank you. And it looks like we have a GAP project update.
Memos in your packet. Construction's underway on package number 1, the northern third, and package number 2, the southern third. Construction should start in January. And the PPRTA has approved the IGA with CDOT, and the board chair has signed it. We sent it to CDOT, and I've received it back. So with all original signatures, so I'll drop that in the file. So our IGA is completed, and that's about all I have to report.
All right, thank you. Any questions on that? I heard they added some bike lanes. Is that? No, I'm kidding. That's a joke. That was a joke. That was a joke. Sorry.
They're managed bike lanes.
Yes. Yeah, they're managed bike lanes, though, so you got to pay to use them. It's a good thing. All right, there is a request for an executive session today, so we'll have Ms. Ivy read the language, and then we'll go into an executive session and politely ask all of the non-participating members to leave.
So I'd be looking for a motion in accordance with the Colorado Open Meetings Law, Sections 24.6, 402, 4B, and 4E, for the purpose of conferencing with an attorney to receive legal advice on specific legal questions and/or determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiation, developing strategy for negotiations, and instructing counsel in connection with the establishing IGA.
All right, that's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Seeing no opposition, we will resolve ourselves to convene an executive session in 3 minutes. Okay, 5 minutes. Make it quick.
3 minutes. What can you do in 3 minutes?
Yeah?
3 wasn't enough.
Is that one?
Yeah.
I thought it was.
Well, yeah. See, I already went earlier and
Right.
took care of all that.
Yeah, no, and there's
Not
no,
been too
there'll be
heavy
no,
on the drink.
nothing under 12 again,
You know what I mean?
because we still know nothing.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion to come out of executive session.
So moved.
And second.
All right, that's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of coming out of executive session, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Seeing no opposition, that passes unanimously. Member government announcements. Do we have no litigation update?
No update.
13 member government, 13 member government announcements. Seeing none, we are adjourned.
All right.
All right, I will see you at the meeting tomorrow. I am not going to be here
Wow.
for lunch, but I will be there at the meeting. Okay, good. Thank you.
Yes, I'm.